Yeah,
Hi, Nick.
absolutely.
Um, Thanks for joining us. Can you start off, just introduce yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, certainly. My name's Nick Oettinger. I'm the CEO, I think they call me now, of the Furniture Recycling Group. And we're a company that specialises in recycling and rejuvenation of mattresses to effectively give them either a longer life or a new life as something else. So stop them hitting landfill.
Right, very good. So, how did you come up with the idea? What was...
Oh God, it was a so I had a sort of varied career in one business or another, anything from building to sort of consultancy, and one consultancy that I went into was in the waste industry,
Right.
and I went there to look at how to recycle the old TVs, the big ones that were quite
Yeah.
deep, not these flat screen ones that everyone has now, and I only went there for 3 months. I ended up being there 18 because we were quite successful in doing that. And then we looked at various other different bits of waste. And one of them was landfills.
Right.
So the company operated a few landfills. So I was up on the landfill working out what was going in, what didn't need to go in, what else could we do with the stuff that was going into the landfill. And if you've ever looked at a landfill, the top of the landfill is always littered with mattresses
Right.
because effectively landfills are tanked. So the rainwater that goes through all the rubbish that we put in doesn't go into water courses everywhere, gets
Right.
pumped out and treated properly. But what that means is you've effectively got a bucket
Yeah.
with a load of waste in it, and depending on how much it rains, the water level moves up and down. And your mattresses, because they are big, are effectively like a bubble of air
Right.
inside, and like bubbles of air in a Coke glass, they work their way up to the top over time. So that's why you always end up with the mattresses on
Wow.
the top. And it was one particular event where we had to shut the landfill. And we jumped in the 4x4s and went up onto the site. And this was a common occurrence. But the delivery vehicle that was disposing of a load of material into the landfill had got stuck on the landfill.
Right.
It got stuck because it got something wrapped around the drive shaft.
Okay.
And what that something was a load of metal springs from a mattress.
Right.
So I was on my back on a landfill with some bolt cutters, probably before a lot of health and safety came in to try and open this, because if you shut a landfill, it's fairly serious. Wagons are
Right.
turning up every sort of 30 seconds to deposit waste into it.
Good.
So we freed it off, and the first thing I thought was, well, there's metal. Metal is recyclable. Why is the metal inside here? Why can't we take the metal out and do something with it? So I looked at, where's the metal come from? Mattresses. Can we shred? No, because so I went through a variety of things, ended up with a business plan that said we can take these things apart. And I was working away from home at the time, so I was staying in a static caravan on a field behind a pub midweek.
Andy.
Well, the locals called it Divorce Alley. There was about 8 static caravans. There was me and 7 divorce guys that had been kicked out of home. So, and I had
Okay.
nothing to do at night, so I used to take mattresses home, start, back to the thing, take them apart, see what was in them, and came up with a business plan that I put to the company that I was working for. And they said, like the idea, we don't really want to process, we just want to deal and move on.
Yeah.
So we're not a process. And I completed my time there with them and moved and then sort of moved on to another consultancy, which was recycling fluorescent tubes,
Yeah.
with the mercury in them. And but this mattress thing wouldn't go away in my head, so I just thought, sod it, I'll have a go myself.
Right.
It's about time I had my own business again, because I've always sort of had my own businesses. So I finished the contract I was on and sat around my dining table and said, right, there's a laptop. Let's finish this business plan and let's start picking up the phone and seeing who wants to send me a mattress and who'll pay me for it. And that was it, really. It wasn't, let's throw lots of money in it. It was, I didn't even have a site. So I made a phone call to lots of different places. Of course, you ring up the big guys first and whatever else. Everybody tells you to go away. And it was a guy called Philip Milne Taylor from Rhodes Furnishes who was our first ever customer. And he said, yeah, I've got mattresses to dispose of. So I said, oh, great. He said, well, I'll send some in next week. Christ, he said, I need a building. So I went and found somebody that I knew that had industrial buildings and rented one off him for a year. And stood on site with my dad. We were waiting for this load to turn up. The biggest wagon you've ever seen in your life turns up. I don't know whether you've ever seen them, but they're high-sided and they're stepped, so you can get more volume onto them.
Wow, yeah.
And this thing turned up, and we only had a very little shared yard out front. I mean, you could fit about 3 cars in it. So it took the driver, God love him, about 45 minutes to try and manoeuvre this vehicle into the yard, to the back, to our roller shutter door. I said to my dad, we bloody made it here first week, look at this. So I opened the back doors once the vehicle had stopped, and there was one mattress 40 feet away in the gloom. That's all there was. So we took it out and we filled our waste acceptance sort of paperwork out, and I took it in and we took it apart, and I took a load of photos of it and bits and pieces, and we just carried on like that. And then we gained a little bit of traction. I ended up bringing on my first ever sort of member of staff in that business, because for the first sort of 3 months, I cut all the mattresses up that we brought in. So I'd spend most of the day trying to get the work in, and then most of the evenings cutting the mattresses up and wow. doing the recycling. And then I took somebody on, and then had to take somebody else on. Then we had to double the size of the building, and on and on to where we are now, which is we've got about 140 colleagues working with us across 4 sites, recycling about sort of 16,000 mattresses a week now. So.
Wow. So yeah. Are the mattresses? So the metal, I presume, do you reuse it, and is it?
So the metal's taken out. So there's about 19, or well, I say 19. There's probably about more than that now. Different materials in a mattress.
Right.
So there is metal. There's polyurethane foam. There's memory foam. There's latex, and there's 2 types. There's synthetic and natural. There's horsehair, coconut fibre called koya. There is 4 different types of shoddy fibres, 4 different types of tickings, which is the outer material. There is wool, alpaca, cotton, polyester, cotton polyester, denim polyester mixes, and all of those have to have homes to go to afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Which we have the homes for those to go to, but they need to be accurately segregated, and they need to have a quality about them. They can't be, well, I always say you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Yeah. So we have to work very hard with our customers to maintain the quality, so it doesn't get mixed with general waste and bin juice and everything else. We have a sanitizing step within our process to make sure that all the materials that go out straight back into new manufacturing, and that can be anything from roof linings in automotive felt in car doors. It can be new mattress felts and waddings. It can be seat felts. It can be carpet underlays. So there's a variety of sort of products that can go back into, that we now send our materials out to. Generally UK, although the more and more mattresses we do, the more and more we're having to look outside the UK for outlets for the materials, because there's only a certain volume of materials that they can use in the UK, because we just don't have the manufacturing infrastructure here.
Okay. Wow. So it sounds like it became profitable as a venture fairly quickly. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've always worked on the basis that we're a sustainable company,
Yeah.
but people think that means green, and
Mm.
it doesn't. It does a bit, but sustainability has many different levels. So for us, we have to have financial sustainability.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can't do the good things.
Yeah.
We have to have sustainability of employment. So good, sustainable jobs that we're creating for people that give them security. So things like no 0 hours contracts and giving people sort of job security going forward as much as you can. Then you've got sustainability of our outlets, because we can't do what we need without having the outlets to send these materials on to, so that they're doing some good. And only if you have all of that can you then be sustainable in a green.
Yeah.
So we've always worked on the basis that we need to be profitable. It is a low value business in terms of each item we get in is very low value. So it's a critical mass business which works on volume. Critical mass when we first started was 250 mattresses a week for us to get to the point breaking even. Of course, at that point, I wasn't paying myself or anything like that, but we could just about cover rent and rates and everything else. And we've grown as a profitable business in steps. There have been times where we've given up our profitability when we've had to grow and pay for the growth. But what we've always done is made sure that we saved, had cash in the bank to pay for that growth throughout a period and move forward. Because everyone will say things like, "You're a green business. I bet people are throwing money at you." It's an absolute fallacy. Nobody gives you money.
Mm.
All they'll do is lend you money, and actually, if you have to pay it back, if you don't need it, do without it, because you have to pay it back at some point.
Yeah.
So we've never had a grant. We've never when we first started, there were quite a few people after we'd starting to do mattress recycling, but they were doing all these back to work programs that the government were dealing with. So I'll take in 20 unemployed people, not pay them, and get a grant off, get paid for the government for training them to go back to work. Well, of course, as soon as the funding was pulled, these things all collapsed.
Yeah.
But we never did anything like that. It wasn't particularly sustainable on the long term from our point of view. Although we did use some of those back to work programs as a recruitment area, so we were looking for people that needed work. Trying to access people who really wanted to work and really wanted to come in and graft was hard work. And what we found is some of these back to work programs, especially things like probation officer, referrals and things like that, were a great source of people who just wanted a chance. And that might have been long-term unemployed, or it might have been changing circumstance, or people moving new to the area. And we found a great success in that. And actually, those are some of the best success stories that we've got in terms of, the people have turned their lives around. We're not as bold as to say we've turned their lives around, but we have given them an opportunity.
Yeah.
And those people have taken it with both hands and run forward. But then again, we've always worked on the basis, if you work for us, it doesn't matter where you come from, referral or not, you get paid the right amount of money. Then we're not beholden to a supplier of labor. It starts becoming very sort of very odd if you're not paying if you can't afford to pay your staff properly, and you're waiting for a government funded scheme to help you get staff through the door. So we've had some great success stories with that, and that's allowed us to access some really good people over the years. And we don't recruit only from there, that's just one of the sources that we use. But our business is very much about people. It's uh, without the guys and girls on the shop floor, there's no job for me in this office.
Yeah. Yeah. How do so have you is there kind of do you have a set of values that people, how do you embed that in the team that, your teams that are working for you, the people that are working for you? How do you embed the values and how do they take to it? Or is it just they're just turning up for a job to get paid? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think, because we have and we've always had regular sort of communication with all staff. This is what we're trying to do. This is where we're going. Um, this is what our next stage of the business evolution is going to be. Do they buy into that or not? I really don't know. If you ask them, they'll say yes, of course. But do they actually go home and go, I feel good because I'm doing something right for the environment? And I don't know, is the honest answer. And we do staff surveys and bits and pieces, but with the greatest will in the world, most of those people just say what's easiest. The culture that we have within the business is very much of a hard work culture, and actually that becomes its own provider of good people, because those that just want to turn up, start at a time, finish at a time, don't care if they don't turn up to work, because they've been out having a few drinks the night before, those people don't tend to last in this business. Yeah. And the reason is that I truly believe the vast majority of people that we've got here eat, sleep, and breathe the business. And are passionate about what we're trying to do. That's not necessarily the green thing. It might be the fact that it's the business. It's the fact of the peers and the people within it. People work with people more than they work for ideology, generally. Yeah. So the culture is more about the people that are in it, and the people that then don't fit into that culture are sort of taken out quite quickly, but not because of the hierarchy, but because they don't fit in, because they stand out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And that is, because we do go sort of above and beyond for our staff, and it's not a family firm, but we sort of see everybody as extended family.
So yeah, it's a real community culture that then attracts people that fit the culture, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always said I've only got one job. I've got to make sure that there's food on 140 odd tables at the end of each week, and that rents and mortgages are paid and the school trips are paid. That's my job. And I take that exceptionally seriously. My job is to make sure money ends up in their hands for doing a decent week's work or a decent month's work, whichever way they get paid, weekly or monthly. And that's got to be ingrained, throughout there. That's my pledge to them as well. Especially in the early days, it's a lot easier to say when you've got sort of finances all sorted and everything else. But through the early days, and I still maintain this, I'm the last person to get paid. If there's no money left, I don't get paid.
Are they quite self-organizing, these people, so that does it just run itself?
I've always worked on the basis that I am fairly lucky. And have I got here through skill and through hard work and through the choices that have been made? The answer is no, because there's so many people out there that work really hard, that go for it. Half it's luck. The other half of it is realizing that I'm not all things to all people. And every appointment that we made, from the first one, which was a chap called Dean, the first guy I ever took on, I've always worked on the principle I will never employ anybody that's not as good as me. They've got to be better than me. So whereas I was cutting up 40 mattresses in a day, Dean could do 65. It's pointless me employing somebody who can do 30.
Yeah.
It's absolutely pointless bringing in our new HR manager, and I know more about HR than he does. You know, I don't. I've brought in a professional who could wipe the floor with me on HR policies and how to deal with it. But that's the way to do it. And what I try and do is we use the word empower, which is a bit of a weird word to say, but basically we give people ownership. You know, that's your bit, you own it.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll give you the obviously there are guidelines and people can't just go off and do whatever they want to. You know, there's got to be as my dad says, measure twice and cut once. So we always plan twice and then do the job and get it right. But these people are bloody clever.
Yeah.
You know, and they know what they're doing. And we pay them the right money and we give them the right benefits. And hopefully they think that we value them because we do. And in that way, what I've got is a group of people around the business that will sort of fall on their sword for you if you ask them. But they're not waiting for you to come up with the idea. Actually, the idea that I come up with will be worse than theirs. Because they know more about it than I do. So, you know, that's, I've always found it, and I've worked in quite a few businesses, always found it a limiting factor when you get management that will not either train people because it's a threat to them, or will not employ people that actually have more about them than they have. What they don't realize is you can't move upwards unless you backfill underneath you. And to do that, you need really good people. Otherwise, you're on very crumbly foundations. So, yeah, so how have we got to where we are? Because I had some daft idea. I worked bloody hard. I was lucky. And I was fortunate enough to stumble across some really great people who've made my silly ideas come to a reality. It's as easy as that, really.
Yeah, it aligns a lot with the kind of leadership I promote in my work, where you're more of a lever of potential. You're leveraging the potential of yourself, the situation, and a group of people to achieve a positive outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because otherwise, you know, I'd be doing everything myself, and I can't. You know, you limit your growth if you do.
Yeah, and you're not micromanaging either, as you know. It's
yeah, that's got to be said though. I am a control freak. I'm an absolute control freak. But I have a group of people around me that will tell me to sod off.
Good stuff.
which is very good.
What's so the idea behind these talks, it's great to get to understand how you operate, and it sounds like you've created a not just a business but a kind of platform, an economic platform for a group of people, which is beneficial, and you're doing some good for the world, which is you know, it's kind of mastery of both worlds here.
Yeah.
If other people have got an idea, you know, obviously different kind of industry or whatever, what are the kind of things that they how would they follow in your footsteps, do you think? What would help?
Well, I would always say, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and I speak to a lot of people in startups these days that are sort of talking to me, whether it be from an investment point of view or whatever it is. And there seems to be, since the dot-com bubble, there seems to be this huge misconception that the way to start a business is you need 2 million in the bank to start with. You need to be private equity, VC funded. There's nothing wrong with starting small and doing it yourself and grow. And I've dealt with a lot of people over the years that have given up on ideas because, oh, the funders aren't funding, or this isn't lending, or I've gone to this grant and I haven't got the money, so I'll give up on it. There are certain things you need money for, without question. But a lot of people are trying to go from 0 to 100 in one step. And the next step is, you know, float it on AIM and suddenly I've got 40 million in the bank. Um, there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting out the back of a van or starting around your dining table and just becoming a master of your job, because that's how you learn. So I would say, if you are lucky enough to somebody gives you this golden checkbook to go off and off you go, but you see it in things like football. So many people come in and go, there's a load of money. It doesn't guarantee your success.
Yeah.
But what it does do is add huge amounts of pressure straight away, huge amounts, because you then have to deliver because somebody's put this cash in. So, start off manageably, start off sustainably, correctly, and then grow organically. And if you then need to fund growth, get external investment in or whatever it is, but have the foundations right to build on. And I suppose the other thing is, as I've said before, when you start employing people, don't be one of those people that says, oh, I need to be the king of the castle, therefore I'll employ people who aren't as good as me, because you're never going to grow, ever. Yeah. All you end up with is a lot of lackeys, and that isn't going to help your business. What you need is really strong, forthright people. Don't worry whether you want to go for a beer with them at night. They're not your friends. They're your work colleagues, and you respect each other. You crack on, you can have blazing rows with them, and then you crack on. But the row is about the business and how the business is best to go forward. So, get the right people in. Don't employ a load of people that you want to be mates with, because it falls over very, very quick. So I suppose those are the two things that I'll advise somebody who's starting out. Don't try to be too big too soon, and heap huge amounts of pressure on yourself. Have some fun with it. Nobody's going to shoot you if it goes wrong.
You hope.
Well, if you try your best, you might fail. I've failed in loads of things and continue to do so. But as my first ever boss told me, which was Mr. Hargreaves, when I used to muck out the cows on Hargreaves Farm at Factory Lane there, and I used to trim his hedges as well when it was summer. And I cut through the wire on his hedge trimmer. I went up and thought, he's going to give me a right telling off here. And he went, Nick, he said, a man who never broke nothing, never did nothing.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
And it stuck with me, and I have lots of these little sayings that these lot are all bored of here. But they stick with you, these things. They stick with you because you just think, in 100 years, who'll care if I tried and failed? Nobody. So try, give it a go. I set this business up just after my wife had told me we were expecting our third child.
Wow.
Brave. So that was a leap of faith from her as well as me, actually. So, but it's a fun thing to do, and you've got to have some fun doing it. But I would say if you do it manageably and start on a reasonable footing, if you're one of these that's great, wants to produce some sort of blue sky fluffy pamphlet and wander around London getting millions of pounds from this fund or that fund, it's not the world I've ever worked in. I don't understand it. I really, and I know that a lot of those don't ever achieve their potential. I do wonder whether if they just started off a little bit, smaller and really grown into what they were as a business. It's half the thing is you don't know what you are as a business when you start it yet.
Yeah, because I presume it's adapted. Your ideas have adapted over time, haven't they? So
yeah, absolutely. We were a sort of disposal point. We now see ourselves as a circular economy business. We are working, and sat on design teams with manufacturers and retailers, looking at the end of life of product before it's even on the shelf.
Right.
So that all those things, sort of added value things to our customers. And it's we hope in our small way that we're changing the design of things so that actually in the end you won't need to have mattress recyclers.
That's an interesting point. That it, you could say that I find a lot of people in this kind of space, if you like, they think capitalism's the answer to everything, and the problem with capitalism is that if you make a business out of it, well, capitalism doesn't want to solve anything. It wants to make a business out of it. But the problem is that'll just perpetuate the problem and expand it, if anything, because
Yeah,
there's this need to keep on growing. So
I suppose it's easy for me to say because the average lifespan of a mattress is 10 to 12 years. So even if everyone changed design tomorrow and none of those coming back needed us, I've still got 10 to 12 years worth of work out there. So it's easier for me to say that to a certain extent because the legacy product that is out there being used. But still, it's for us, for me, if we make mattress design better to recycle or easier to recycle, or manufacturers end up taking them back and just putting them into a machine that turns it back into a new mattress and off it goes out again. I mean, that's the nirvana. Then that's absolutely great. And we should all be working towards that. Are we going to get to 100%? I don't think you ever get to 100%. Are we going to try and hold our cards close to our chest so we stay as far away as that as possible to maintain the revenue? No, absolutely not. No, let's make it better. Because if we solve this, then I'm sure there's other things.
yeah, exactly. There's I think there's going to be the actual I mean you're going to be able to achieve with technology and stuff, AI and robotics or whatever, you're going to be able to use smaller teams to achieve greater value with technology. But I also think that if you come into this space, there's nothing wrong with, or you should kind of think and be courageous enough to think, well, I want to solve the problem and then move on to the next problem, as opposed to trying to
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're now talking to people about different types of mattresses, completely different makeups of mattresses that end up being the trigger's broom of a mattress. So you never throw the thing away. What you do is you replace the part that's worn.
Right.
And I know people are looking at rental models and different things for that. So what you tend to find is if you try and solve the problems that you've got now and solve, there will be something else for you to do. You're not going to do yourself out of a job because things evolve and things move. And let's have it right. If we solve this problem, somebody's going to give us a crack at another problem, aren't they? Because we're a success. So we're not all going to sit there and pack our desk away and go home tomorrow. We're going to go on to the next thing, and that'll be bigger. But if we start off with it on the basis of how do we solve the current problem of stopping things going into landfill? Now we're on to how do we stop mattresses turning into waste to start with?
Yeah, brilliant.
Whilst also looking at the fact that retailers need to sell volume, the country needs people to sell stuff because growth grows by people consumerism, and things like the throwaway society is seen as a very bad term. I'd like to rephrase that and say the throwaway society is great if the products that we're throwing away are built to circular economy principles.
Yeah.
It's only bad if they're not. Because, if we didn't have a sort of throwaway society of, that fridge is going to last 50 years, fridges are now lasting probably less time than they ever have. Well, the next one you buy is going to be more efficient. So things are getting more efficient. Things are, so design moves on, and it's great. But what we've got to do is go through this very difficult period of don't think of what you put on the market and somebody will deal with it when it gets thrown away. Think of, I need to solve what happens to this product before I put it on the market when it gets to the end of its useful life, which may be in 7 or 8 years' time, or 10 years' time, or 12 years' time. Might also be next week if it breaks.
Yeah.
So how can we repair things? We've got into this silly thing now where it's cheaper to replace than to repair. But actually, if we do replace it with a more efficient model, and the thing that we're replacing is built to circular economy principles, so all the materials are recycled or reused in component form or whatever they are, then actually it's great. It's a brilliant thing.
Yeah. Yeah, this friend of mine, Dr. Tasmin Woolley Barker, she's involved in biomimicry and things like that, but she always talks about the fact that nature actually has lots of waste, but no matter how much waste is produced, there's always something that can eat it. Use it in
it's
some
all
way.
used. Absolutely,
waste is not a problem as long as there's something around that can use it to utilize it.
And actually, all the waste that we create is not a long-term problem. It's because everything will. If we stop tomorrow, the jungle would take over, everything would be bloody gone. Within, but what we've got is waste is a short-term problem. So what we've got to do is solve those short-term problems and allow the short-term problems to we've got to stop digging up new materials and throwing away materials into a hole in the ground. I mean, it's can we reuse those materials? Can we get to them? Can we design something so that we can get those materials out quickly and easily? It's very odd when you work on a household waste site, which I have done. When you look at the different skips, when you go in there with your car full of rubbish, and you look at all the ones that are general waste and all the ones that are recyclable. And what you'll find is all the ones that are recyclable are worth money.
Yeah.
And all the things that are non-recyclable become or are not worth money become general waste, aside from mattresses.
Yeah.
So recyclability, and this is where circular economy, I think, has got it slightly wrong, is that you can sit with 100 sustainability managers of various different companies, and they all talk about the circular economy. And they will all talk about, right, well, the circularity of materials and all this sort of stuff. And as I say to them, forget the circularity, think of the economy. Because if you put something in at the start that's worth money at the end, it will be taken up and it will be recycled.
Yeah.
So if you had mattresses that instead of steel springs had copper springs, would you ever see a mattress on the side of the road? No. In fact, people have been nicking mattresses to get the material value out of.
Yeah.
So build to the economy, follow the pound notes, follow the euros, or whatever it is. And in that way, if you can work out how much your product is in terms of value at the end of its useful life today, and it's at that critical level of being worth segregating, collecting, and recycling, then you're designing too, because nobody's going to pay for materials that they can't use.
No, it's exactly what they do in nature, isn't it?
Nobody's going to pay for a load of material and then throw it into field and burn it, are they? It's people will only pay for things that they can use.
Yeah.
So I think it should be economy circular. But,
economy, yeah. Good point. So, well, that's been really enlightening. It's almost like a masterclass in leadership, being a humble leader, and also the circular economy and perhaps how it should be moving forward. But that's been really enlightening. Thank you.
Listen, no problem at all. Thanks ever so much for having me on, Murph.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks.